Welcome back, Rebel fans. You're listening to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with Zach Moreth. Today, we're here to talk a little bit of Ole Miss sports. Ole Miss sports kind of on the rise. I mean, been on the rise all year, Zach, but it seems like right now, Ole Miss sports is the best they've ever been, just historically all around right now. I mean, I know there's a lot going on with the way the college football landscape is going on with Greg Sankey doing stuff and other leagues doing stuff. But right now, as a whole, the athletic department for Ole Miss is looking pretty good. Start off today, the men's golf team advanced to the semifinals, taking down number one Arizona State in the quarterfinals today. Just yesterday, Michael Lasasso became the individual champion for D1 baseball. I mean, for D1 golf. He's going to be in the U.S. Amateur. He's going to be in the U.S. Amateur tournament. He's going to be in the U.S. Open. He's going to compete in the 2026 Masters. I mean, just your overall thoughts. I mean, I know we haven't talked a lot about golf this year, Zach, but it seems like Ole Miss golf has been on the rise all year. I mean, if anyone's followed Ole Miss golf, you know that they've been top-ranked team all year. Just your overall thoughts on Lasasso getting that championship yesterday, Zach.
That was super cool. And again, I really didn't know we were still going this deep late in the season here for golf. I mean, I knew there was a lot of preseason hype, but the fact that they're still killing it. And then I turned on my TV today and wow, dude, it goes into basically golf overtime between Tom Fisher and the ASU kid, who both great players, great teams, but it was just fun to watch. And I'm not a huge golf guy, but I'll tune into Masters Sunday and some of the big PGA events. And it was got like that similar vibe, man. A lot of energy, cameras everywhere. And then it was almost like I was watching a basketball, baseball, or football game, waiting for this putt to go in on whatever hole it may be. So for them to bring that excitement to golf, and it's this proof of concept thing that's getting shown from basically every sport right now that, hey, you can be an Ole Miss golfer and achieve the goals that you want to, let alone not only make the Final Four, but also win an individual national championship, Cam. It's awesome, dude. It's been really fun to see. Again, we're recording this during the Oklahoma State match. I think Cam told me they're down 2, so
they're down 2 match wins right now. Yep.
Yeah, we need the boys to tune up a little bit. But man, what a week, especially for golf here.
Absolutely. I mean, like we said, Lasasso going to get to play on the big stage for Ole Miss next year, representing Ole Miss. Really good for him. Really good for the Ole Miss golf program. I mean, it seems like, I think last year, I think Alabama got a huge upgrade to their golf facility. It seems like Ole Miss is probably due for one pretty soon. Not that there's anything wrong with the Ole Miss golf course, beautiful golf course over there, but it seems like with the way that this program is going right now, we're probably going to see some upgrades to that facility here soon. Just some of the around the other golf tournament, around the tournament right now, and in that semifinals on the other side of that is Virginia and Florida. And like we said, that ASU matchup was crazy. I think it was like 21 holes there at the end.
Yeah.
The kid that Tom Fisher was facing, I texted Zach during that match, and that kid drilled like a 40-yard chip in right after he got out of the bunker, and then Fisher answered to advance Ole Miss to the semifinals. So congratulations to the Ole Miss golf team. Still hoping to see what they can do if they can advance to the championship today. Still a lot of golf left to play in those matches. So just keep in tune with that. We'll probably have this pod posted shortly tonight, maybe. And if you're watching it, maybe you can see the results by the end of that. I think that's all we got for golf. Like I said, we don't cover a lot of golf on this pod. Just wanted to get that in. Anytime Ole Miss has got a national champion in any sport, we want to mention those people, we want to mention those guys, and give them their props. But I think that's all we got for golf side of things. I want to mention something briefly on basketball. The men's recruiting rankings shut down yesterday for good for the 2025 class. Ole Miss finished top 15 in the country. I believe they finished 15th exactly. That's one of the highest ranked recruiting classes in program history, Zach. It seems like Chris Beard's probably going to do this for years to come now, as long as he's at Ole Miss. And I've said it many times off of the podcast to other people, probably even to you, Zach, but this is something that Chris Beard and the Ole Miss program is going to need to do to compete, with the Dukes, the UNCs, the Auburns, the Texas A&Ms, all those teams. That's the teams that you're going to have to compete with. You're going to have to do it at the high school level. Yes, you're going to have to recruit in the portal, and Chris Beard does just that every year, but it starts with getting, 3, 4, 5 guys that are really top players in the country, top 100 players in the country, and Ole Miss did just that this year. Also adding a FIBA MVP and Carmine as well. So really excited to see what they're going to do next year. This is going to be one of the biggest Ole Miss teams as far as size that I've seen in a while that they're going to line up next year. And it's going to be very interesting to watch what they can do in the pavilion next year, Zach. Any thoughts on basketball for you?
Super pumped up, and it sounds like talking about Duke, Auburn, UNC, all these elite programs, but the fact of the matter is Chris Beard took a roster full of guys that he didn't recruit. Obviously, some of them in there from the portal and whatnot, but dudes who like Brakefield and Morrell who've been there since day one, and he took them to the damn Sweet 16. So sounds crazy, but with Chris Beard at the helm, sky's the limit, man. And I think he's put together a roster who can take you past even that second weekend, especially with him and his staff and how good they are.
Absolutely. Big things to come for men's basketball, big things to come for women's basketball as well. We don't have anything much on them right now, but we will get anything we got on them in the future. But yeah, big things to come for basketball on both sides of men's and women's there. Moving into softball, I'm sure many of you know Ole Miss softball is heading down to OKC for the first Women's College World Series appearance in program history. Very big accomplishment for them and Jamie Traskell. Very big accomplishment for the school. And just in that point, I mean, Ole Miss had kind of like a leeway year last year, even though they were kind of not terrible last year. I mean, I believe they made the tournament last year, but stadium was getting built here in Oxford. Didn't really get to play at home much. Now they're playing at home in a brand new stadium. Didn't get to play in that stadium much this year at home until later in the season. And now, I mean, just when you get your brand new stadium built, that looks amazing, by the way, you make a College World Series. That's what it's all about. I mean, you're building a program up, and then you're making it to this level. That's what it's all about. Just a few things on softball here. If you didn't watch that Arkansas series, Lair Bateau was crazy in that series. She went 4 for 9 against Arkansas with 3 RBIs and a big homer in Game 3 to really lift them up in the early innings there. Mackenzie Pickens, one of those super freshmen that they have on that roster as well. I mean, when you watch her at the plate, she doesn't ever look like a freshman at the plate. I mean, heck of a fielder too. I mean, she's great at second base, but never really looks like a freshman ever at the plate. She's going to be big for them moving on into the World Series. Ashton Lansdale, if you haven't heard that story, go read it. Go read up on that. I mean, she's a player that didn't play softball until she got to the collegiate level. She played baseball all the way until she went to junior college baseball, and then she played junior college baseball. Was the first woman to ever play in junior college baseball. Transferred to FIU to play softball. Finally got into the softball world. Now she's here at Ole Miss. She's one hell of an infielder. The bat's starting to come along for her as her transition from baseball to softball. Obviously, you know she can hit. She played softball. I mean, she played baseball, so you know she can hit. It's coming along for her right now. And like I said, she's one hell of an infielder. Really excited what they're going to do. The tough thing is, as I mentioned to Zach before the start of the pod, is they're facing that $1 million pitcher at Texas Tech and Najari Kennedy, familiar name there in Kennedy for Ole Miss fans. But they're going to be probably going to be facing her in that first game against Texas Tech. And I mentioned before the pod to Zach, she's got 279 strikeouts and only 41 walks this year. So it's going to be tough going at the plate for this Ole Miss team. This is an Ole Miss softball team that hits really well at the plate. A lot of people in this lineup above 320, above 330 in that range. I think it's going to come down to can you get a couple runs early off of Kennedy, and then can the pitching finish it off for you? I think the pitching did really well in that Arkansas series. Brianna Lopez has been kind of the anchor in the playoffs for this softball team. She's the senior. She's the leader out there. Obviously, Mia Guachino, stud freshman, hasn't done a ton in the playoffs so far for them. Obviously, you can't really expect a freshman to be thrown into the spotlight too much, especially in the middle of that circle in a softball field. But they're going to need her if they're going to make a run out there in OKC. And then Aaliyah Bimfer, she sat down 14 batters in a row, Zach, against Arkansas to win that Game 3 for them. She's been unbelievable. Like I said, I believe I said in the last podcast, she's like the Ole Miss Ohtani, really. I mean, she hits a bunch of home runs. She gets up there and strikes people out. I mean, they're looking really good. If you're Ole Miss fans, if you're following Ole Miss softball, they're looking really good right now. Unfortunately, you're going to run into a bunch of heavy top programs in the softball world out there in OKC. But I mean, who knows? I mean, Ole Miss baseball, we didn't think they were going to win a championship in 2022. They made that run, ended up winning the whole thing. But I think that's all we got for softball. You got anything on softball, Zach?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. It's the College World Series. It's teams who are playing their best, all going against each other. But the bottom line is, look, you got to score runs. And this girl on Texas Tech is going to make it difficult. One of the best in the country, getting paid the most. And something I found interesting, Cam, was, I don't know if you saw, but I think it was a girl from Tennessee who was throwing some ridiculous fastball. Was it up to like 70, 75?
It was 79.4. She almost hit 80.
So I was like looking in the comments and don't quote me on this. It's some internet genius I'm taking this from. But one of them was like, this essentially translates to like 100 miles an hour on the baseball field. If there was like you know what I'm saying? Like to contrast to the sport of baseball. So yeah, there's some dogs in this tournament. That's all I got to say. But what a season! Similar as golf, they've proven they can do it. Something they can sell to people who want to come to Ole Miss and softball players in the portal. And like that with that stadium opening, it's great time to be a softball player, man.
Great time to be a softball player. Great time to be a softball player at Ole Miss. Great time for that Ole Miss softball program. So good luck to them in OKC. I think that's all we got for softball for you guys today. And with that, moving to baseball, which a lot of you guys have been following most of the year long. We've been talking about it all year on the podcast. And if you would have asked me when we first did our first baseball podcast of the season, Zach, if you would have asked me if Ole Miss was gonna, if you would have told me Ole Miss was gonna host, the answer would be absolutely not. I mean, not for the simple fact that Ole Miss was picked 15th, picked to finish 15th in the preseason polls. I didn't think they were going to finish 15th in the preseason polls. Did I think they were going to finish anywhere like at that 7-6 range? Maybe, but I probably thought at best maybe they finished maybe 10th in the SEC. They're hanging around there with the Kentuckys and the South Carolinas of the world, and we're squeezing them back into the tournament as a 2 or 3 seed. But this Ole Miss baseball team really caught fire at the beginning of the year. You know, dropped a couple games probably they shouldn't have dropped there in the middle of the year in the SEC. But then they turn it on at the end of the season. I mean, I know you dropped that series to State that you really didn't want to drop, but then you come back home and you beat the number 16 in the country in Auburn, who got some really interesting bias in that selection show
Yeah.
on Monday, if you ask me. But we won't talk too much about that, but they got some really interesting bias in that. But obviously, Ole Miss took them down at the end of the season, number 16 in the country. They go to Hoover. I was there when they beat Florida, came back home. They beat Arkansas. They shut out LSU, and then they go back, lose the game to Vandy. 3-2 game. That was a great game against Vandy. All props to Vandy there. I mean, that's a team in Vandy that bats 260, and they just win games because they pitch it really well and they field it really well and they get the timely hit. That's what Vandy does. That's why they earned the number 1 seed in the country this year in the tournament. And I think this Ole Miss team proved a lot in that tournament. Something that they hadn't proved all year was they can be consistent on the mound. I mean, starters, you know what you're going to get. 3 Mississippi guys, 3 seniors. Well, I mean, redshirt junior and Hunter Elliott, who can return to Oxford next year if he wants to. But you get Hunter Elliott on Fridays, you get Maddox on Saturdays, and you get Nichols. And you know you're going to get those guys, and you're probably going to get the best out of them. But the bullpen is where Ole Miss has kind of struggled a little bit, Zach. I mean, outside of Mason Morris, outside of McCausland, you know, the occasional Walker Hooks pretty good outing there, and then Connor Spencer in the back of the bullpen. But this bullpen during the tournament didn't allow a run until Taylor Rabe gave up that home run, that solo shot home run to right field. That's unbelievable. That's something I didn't expect going into this tournament. That was what I thought Ole Miss was. That's what I thought was going to get Ole Miss eliminated out of this tournament pretty early. But I mean, they make a run. This bullpen steps up, and it seems like they're playing their best baseball right now.
No, you're spot on. They sure are, Cam. There's no question about that. The first thing I want to say is I thought it was hilarious when the broadcast was just I can't think of a better word other than glazing the Arkansas Hawaiian brothers just for them to have probably like the worst game of the season. It was hilarious. It was great content for Ole Miss fans. Obviously, winning over Arkansas never gets old. They don't have a natty. They like to talk like they do. So beating them makes it even better, especially in football, basketball, and softball as well. So interesting. But like you said, Cam, I think even Taylor Rabe, man, I was surprised when he went in. I thought Hudson Calhoun, proved enough to get the call in that situation, but his stuff was playing. I mean, I texted one of my friends. I was like, are the radar guns hot? Because Rabe's sitting 94, 95 here, and his changeup and his slider are playing really nicely. And you guys got to keep in mind, man, Vanderbilt plays a red hot Tennessee team. Now I know they were limited on arms after going deep with Texas, but Tennessee was playing out of their minds that week, and Vanderbilt beats them 10-0. So in my mind, you have Walker Hooks, a true freshman, who's been kind of on and off starting the game. To lose by 1 run and play him 3-2 could have been worse things that happened. Obviously, you're close. You want to win that trophy. But I thought things could have gotten a lot more out of hand, and they didn't. So Ole Miss proved why they're the number 10 national seed. and people who are talking about how difficult their regional is, go find me a regional that doesn't have difficult teams. Tennessee. I might just be a Tennessee hater, but I think they got away with a couple interesting picks there. But look, man, Cam and I were talking. You could have had TCU, you could have had Southern Miss coming in as your number 2 seed. To be honest, I'd rather have Georgia Tech. And that's not a shot towards Georgia Tech, but the facts are the facts, man. Their fans are upset that they didn't host. Here's the deal. They didn't play Florida State or North Carolina, the 2 best ACC teams, in a series. And when they played Clemson, they kind of got walked all over. I think they went 1-3 against them on the season. Clemson also knocked them out of the ACC tournament. But don't get me wrong. They're a good team. They have all the potential in the world. Western Kentucky has 46 games won. Don't sleep on those guys. They got like a red blob mascot too. That guy's awesome. I hope he's there. And then Murray State. We went to extras. I think it was the same night we beat Tennessee in basketball, but they've shown that. Yeah. So memorable night in Oxford. But they've shown what they can do as well. But just to get further into that, Cam, we're going to get there. But that was just my overall analysis of the SEC tournament, along with who's coming to Oxford this weekend.
Absolutely. And going back to the SEC tournament just for a second, I don't know if you guys seen it, but Fennell, the pitcher that pitched against Ole Miss for Vanderbilt in that series in Game 3, that absolutely shut Ole Miss down with that changeup and the quick pitching that he does. If you haven't watched him all year, it wasn't just against Ole Miss that he was doing that. He wasn't being arrogant when he was on the mound that time. You got to watch him all year because that's what he does. He stands on the mound. He doesn't get off. I mean, if you watch the Andrew Fisher at bat, if you watch the Fisher at bat, he's standing there waiting for Fisher, and then the announcers like Fisher calls his league leading timeout because Fisher does that. He did it at Ole Miss. He calls timeouts once a at bat, maybe twice a at bat sometimes. But Fennell's just standing there waiting for him on the mound. The umpire's not even behind the catcher yet. The umpire's clicking on his little tracker, and Fennell's just waiting there. That's absolute psycho energy, and I love that out of that guy. I mean, he absolutely shut Ole Miss down in that Game 3, so I can't really say much about him. But that's the type of guy you want, especially the guy that you're going to start on a Sunday, on an Energy Sunday. That's the type of guy that you want on the mound. But besides that, we'll get back into this Oxford Regional and what's to come for that. This is the first regional host for Ole Miss since 2021. Obviously, that was that Tim Elko year, the Elko year with the torn ACL. Elko hits the grand slam against Southeastern Missouri. Elko pretty much prevails them in that championship series, in that regional series to Fayetteville. To Arizona. They obviously drop in Arizona later in the tournament as well. Ole Miss has not hosted a super regional since 2009, and me and Zach talked about that before the pod. I mean, obviously, you have to win your regional, and you have to hope the opposite, Georgia, loses their regional to host a super regional this year, so you're not guaranteed. But Ole Miss has not won a super regional in their 3 times hosting a super regional. So do you really want one? Obviously, you want to play baseball in Oxford as long as you can. You want to have that best atmosphere at Swayze as you can. But do you really want that to happen? Last time Ole Miss was guaranteed a super regional was in 2018. They were the number 4 national seed in the country. That was the highest national seed in program history. And they won all their games leading up to the final. And then they dropped 2 to Tennessee Tech, who I told Zach before the pod, hit like 140, 150 home runs that year. Everyone seemed to think, Tennessee Tech's not going to do that to us. I mean, we got pitchers, we got SEC guys, they're not going to do that to us. And I guess those Ole Miss Rebels underestimated them that year, and Tennessee Tech ended up routing them in 2 games and advancing to the supers that year. So that was the last time Ole Miss was guaranteed a super. They're not guaranteed a super this year. There could have been an argument, if you want to say, there could have been an argument for Ole Miss as that 8th seed. I think that 8th seed was kind of the only seed that was up in the air, really, at any point. But, I mean, if you ask me, I said it a second ago, that Auburn 4 seed was probably the only seed that I was kind of questioned about. I mean, I wasn't really too mad about the ones in front of Ole Miss after that, but that Auburn one was kind of one that I was a little puzzled about when I saw it pop up on the screen, especially as the 4th overall seed. But won't talk too much more about that. I keep going back to that, even though Auburn's not even really an Ole Miss rival or someone a team that I despise or anything. But talk more a little bit about this regional, Zach. Judd Utermark swinging probably the hottest bat on the team for Ole Miss right now. I mean, I think going into the final game of the tournament, he was batting like 12 for 22 or something like that, like 540. in the past like 6 or 7 games for Ole Miss, and that's all without hitting home runs. I think he hit one home run in the
Right.
Auburn series. I mean, Judd Utermark has not really been hitting a lot of home runs lately. He's been really getting deeper into his at bats. I mean, if you watch Utermark's at bats earlier in the season, going into the middle of the season, I mean, he was either getting a home run, he was hitting a double off the fence, or he was striking out on 3 pitches. And that's nothing against Judge Utermark. I mean, that's the type of player that he is. He's a Tim Elko type of player who's a big swing and miss guy, but when he swings and he hits it, it's going to go a long way. But something happened. Maybe Tyler Keenan had something to do with that. The Ole Miss first base coach and former third baseman. Maybe Mike Clement had something to do with that. But Judge Utermark has really calmed it down at the plate. He's been getting longer into his at bats. He's been drawing some walks. I mean, he's getting 2-2 counts, 3-2 counts, where he's getting singles after he gets deep into those counts. He's playing the best baseball I think he's played in his entire career. And you're going to need someone else to step up, though. I mean, this is an Ole Miss team that was really swinging hot bats all year, crushing the baseball all year. But in that tournament, you really relied on pitching out there in Hoover. You're going to need Luke Hill to step it back up at some point. I mean, I know he was batting 340, I think, at one point in the season. I think he's down to 320 now. You're going to need Furness to come up with some big hits. You're going to need Follies to start being clutch again. You're going to need Federico to get those quality ABs at the plate. Obviously, Ole Miss will probably get Mormon back in the outfield. Not probably the best bat, maybe not a better bat than Federico, but definitely probably the best fielder on the team for Ole Miss. You're getting Mason Nichols back, who you're probably going to pitch at some point this weekend. I think the big question for Ole Miss this weekend, Zach, is who do you pitch on Friday? And I
Yes.
mean, obviously, the obvious answer is Hunter Elliott. But do you go Maddox on Friday, switch up the rotation a little bit? Does that make Hunter get thrown off a little bit? I don't think so. This is a guy in Hunter Elliott that is used to pitching on the big stage, that is going to come up there and compete and throw strikes. And even when he gets guys on base, I mean, you see what he does. He erases the base runner with a pickoff move because he got the nastiest pickoff move in college baseball. But who do you pitch on Friday? In my opinion, you probably go Hunter Elliott. You make a statement against Murray State, who probably thinks they can beat you because they took you to 10 innings early in the season. And you put your best guy out there. And, I mean, who knows what Elliott does? Maybe Elliott goes 10 strikeouts and 15 pitches, or maybe Murray State shells them. Who knows? But I think the obvious answer is Hunter Elliott, but you can't be mad with Riley Maddox either, Zach.
I typically, I think I think they're going to pitch Hunter. Look, you look at what Bianco's done all year long. He hasn't changed that pitching rotation, even when times were desperate. There were a couple outings where Maddox didn't perform so well, and the fans were kind of calling for Mason Morris to take his spot, and it didn't change a damn thing. So I think he sticks with Hunter. If it was up to me, I think you could go Riley. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you're going to get a similar result on either side. Two guys who are both pitching the ball really well at this point. I think it's going to be interesting. I didn't want to pay for the subscription over D1 baseball, but the splits of Murray State, are they better against righties or lefties? Do they, deal with the higher velocity of Maddox or kind of that slower, insane pitch arsenal of Hunter? What do they hit better? But at the end of the day, I think Hunter's going to be that guy. I hope by the end of the game, you don't have to burn your big-time arms, whether that be Connor Spencer or Mason Morris. You could even throw Calhoun, who's probably going to become a big-time piece. Kate Townsend's probably going to get some innings here too, Cam. But those are guys you probably want to save for Sunday or even Monday if it goes to it. Regardless of the fact, it's like you said, man, this is going to boil down to the offense because you can say, they've been doing great things all year long, 100-plus home runs for the first time or second time in program history, but they really weren't doing anything special in Hoover. The pitching was the one that stepped up and propelled those wins, especially against LSU and even the Arkansas game a little bit after that first inning. I would love to see, no disrespect to Campbell Smithwig, but I think Hayden Federico does deliver some more quality at bats more consistently throughout the game. So I'd like to see Federico in that DH spot with Moorman coming back to right or flip-flopped. If Moorman's still recovering a little bit, you can DH him and throw Federico, who's done a great job in right field as well. But that's what it's going to boil down to. A couple names you mentioned, Luke Hill and Austin Foley. I said it before the Arkansas game. Foley has the ability to change the outcome of everything with one swing, man. And that's what he did in the first inning. He basically put that game away. We never looked back. So if he can do that in a couple of games, just to secure Ole Miss that win early or maybe get a big-time hit, I think things are going to be going really well headed into hopefully a one regional, and then obviously Super's coming up.
Absolutely, and probably in that Arkansas game, he was interviewed after the game on the SEC Network set, and maybe some of you know this, some of you probably don't. If you watch Austin Foley's post game press conferences throughout the season, he's a very quiet, very subtle guy, very calm. Usually answers questions in about one sentence. He probably gave the best quote all year that he gave to the SEC Network broadcast after that Arkansas game when he said the Arkansas pitcher made a mistake, hung a change up to him, and he didn't miss it. And that's where he ended his sentence. I thought that was probably the best quote
It's
Austin Foley gave
cold.
all year. That's a really cold quote from Austin Foley there. But yes, Austin Foley is going to need that clutch gene that he's been given to him all year to kind of come back into play here. Obviously, Will Furnace has that clutchness about him too. You're hoping if you're Ole Miss that you don't have to be clutch in that first game against Murray State, that you handle business and get to Georgia Tech or Western Kentucky the next day, which I think will be a harder matchup in day two if you can get to that day two with the win. With that being said, I'll give you guys a little bit of a rundown on the Murray State lineup, or just a couple of their main guys right now. They got two guys with 16 home runs, and Jonathan Holgert and Carson Garner. Both those guys are going to be raking, and they have another guy that's hit 10 home runs, and Will Verling. They're going to hit a lot of home runs probably throughout this tournament. I think they hit one or two home runs in that midweek game against Ole Miss earlier in the season, and they're probably going to throw Nick Shute, who obviously Ole Miss didn't see in the midweek. That's their Friday guy. Now, Friday guys in these conferences and in non-Power 5 conferences probably aren't your Hunter Elliott's of the worlds. But it's baseball. You never know what's going to happen. Ole Miss can come in and get shut down by this guy. And just like I said, Hunter Elliott can go in there and get shelled by this Murray State pitching staff or Riley Maddox, or whoever they decide to run out there. But I think this is an Ole Miss team that feels really good about Friday. This is an Ole Miss team that when we talked to them the other day, once the selection show came out and the bracket was revealed, they seemed very confident about their matchups and how they felt about going into this tournament. And I think what a lot of these guys are looking forward to is I'm not sure. I'm not sure if anybody on these teams. I mean, obviously, I can't really think off the top of my mind off the transfers if they've been on teams that hosted regionals before. But there's nobody that has been on this Ole Miss team for a couple of years that has hosted a regional. I mean, when they won that championship a couple of years ago, they didn't host a regional. Hunter Elliott and Mason Nichols obviously did pitch in the big spotlight. Riley Maddox was hurt that year with Tommy John, but he was on the team. But Hunter Elliott and Nichols, obviously big time freshmen who pitched in the spotlight that year on the road for Ole Miss all postseason long. This is an Ole Miss team that has never seen playoff baseball at Swayze. I mean, obviously that Tennessee series, I was telling a very good friend of mine that it's going to be way different than that Tennessee series. Obviously, that Tennessee series was packed, it was rowdy, but I mean, this is something playoff baseball. A regular season game at Ole Miss, tops will probably have 13,000 on a crazy weekend. We might see north of 15,000 this weekend, especially with the first regional being in town for the first time in 4 years. You might see a ton of people are probably going to be standing room only out there in the outfield. There's going to be tents out there in the outfield. There's going to be tents in the parking lot. There's going to be tents probably over there by Vaught-Hemingway Stadium just watching the game on the TV because they couldn't get into the stadium. I mean, it's going to be a crazy weekend in Oxford. It's going to feel like almost a football weekend. If you haven't experienced that, that's probably what it's going to feel like. There's going to be beer showers everywhere every time there's a home run hit. I think that's what Ole Miss has to use to their advantage. I mean, you played in front of a lot of fans all year, maybe not to this extent, but you played in front of a lot of fans all year. Georgia Tech, Western Kentucky, and Murray State obviously don't play in front of fans like this. They don't play in front of the SEC fans like this who get rowdy and you're out in right field and the right fielder is getting trash talked by the student section. I mean, the first baseman is getting trash talked by the people down the first base line. That doesn't happen at other ballparks very often. I think Ole Miss has to use that to their advantage. You have to stay calm. And even if you're losing the game at some point, you have to stay calm and let your fans kind of carry you and carry that momentum for you, and then give them something to cheer about so you can build off of their momentum, build off of their energy. I think that's what Ole Miss is going to be looking forward to this weekend the most. I think it's pretty big for a lot of these Mississippi guys, especially those three starters that I named. They're all three Mississippi guys getting a chance to start on the mound in front of their families, in front of their friends. I mean, these are guys in Hunter Elliott and Mason Nichols that grew up just down the road, and then Riley Maddox down in Jackson. I mean, these are guys who might not pitch in Swayze Field ever again. And if you're asking me, if you're asking me to predict what they're going to do on their last outing at Swayze Field in a playoff game, I mean, you already know what Hunter Elliott's going to be competing with. You already know what Mason Nichols is going to bring to the table. Riley Maddox is the only person that seemed like nothing to knock on him, but he hasn't been consistent all year. But I mean, down the stretch, Riley Maddox has been pretty impressive. So I think it's really big for these Mississippi kids on this team. Obviously, not a lot of Mississippi kids in that lineup for Ole Miss. But I mean, like I said, this is an Ole Miss team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, especially hosting experience. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this environment and how they handle all that at Swayze Field this weekend.
It's going to be insane, Cam. I mean, coming from Chicago, I'm coming down Friday. Just got that all confirmed, thank God. But there's a ton of people, even from my area, who are coming down from this. So then, you factor in all the Texas, Bama, Louisiana, and obviously all over the state of Mississippi. It's going to be bumping, man. I do believe it's going to come down to Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. They're led by the 2025 ACC Coach of the Year in Danny Hall. He's been at Georgia Tech for 32 seasons. That's more than old man Mike, man. I didn't even think that was possible at this point. He's been there for a very long time. That team's got a lot to play for, knowing that it's his last ride down there in Atlanta. They kind of remind me of an Arkansas-styled offense, but we're at the point where everyone's going to remind me of an Arkansas-style offense. Everyone's going to be hitting over 300. A lot of guys are going to have 10, 15-plus homers. And there's going to be a pretty decent, crowd of pitchers over in the bullpen. That's just how it goes. I think the Ole Miss offense will be able to propel them over Georgia Tech if it comes to it. But at the same time, I will say I don't want to sleep on Western Kentucky and Murray State. But I'm looking forward to an awesome weekend. Continue to stay tuned to us for updates. I am curious whether it's going to be Hunter or Riley, but it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Going to be a lot of fun this weekend. Like Zach said, stay tuned for updates. We'll probably learn that pitching rotation probably on Thursday, if not early Friday morning. Ole Miss will play at 7 p.m. on Friday. The first game between Western Kentucky and Georgia Tech will be at 3 p.m., I believe. And the winner's bracket on the next day, I don't think it's officially released, but it's kind of been leaked a little bit. It seems like the loser's bracket will be at 1 p.m. and the winner's bracket will be at 5 p.m. Going back to Western Kentucky, the last time Western Kentucky came to Oxford for a regional was 2009. Drew Pomerez pitched a program record-tying 16 strikeouts in a complete game effort on just 2 days of rest in that Oxford regional. So I mean, that's
see that anymore
from Drew Pomerez. And if you're not following Drew Pomerez right now, he had a great start to his career early in his career. Didn't really do a ton in the middle of his career, but he's looking lights out right now. I mean, he's looking like probably one of the better pitchers in the majors right now. Maybe not one of the better pitchers in the majors, but one of the best under the radar type of guys in the majors right now. He's still going strong, and he's a part of that really good 2009 team that ended up losing in the Super. That was the last time Ole Miss hosted a Super Regional. But like I said, Ole Miss will have the potential to host a Super Regional if Georgia drops theirs in Athens. I think they have Duke, Oklahoma State, and Bennington, I think, in their regional out there. So there's a chance they drop it. I mean, obviously Duke and Oklahoma State are really storied programs that could beat Georgia, but Georgia's hit like 130 home runs this year. They have a really small park out there that's very home run friendly, and obviously they hit it every day. So they know how to get the ball up in that park, and they know how to hit a lot of home runs. So that's a very scary matchup, especially if you're Ole Miss and you win and head down to Athens for that Super. But I think a lot of the things that I've been telling people when they talk about that and they talk about the home runs from Georgia and matching up with them down there, this is an Ole Miss team that's been lifting the ball really well all year, that's been crushing the ball all year. Plenty of guys on this Ole Miss team that you can crush baseballs 450 feet. So I don't think I'm too worried about that if Ole Miss ends up winning this regional and heads down to Athens. But we'll obviously have to see. Anything's possible in college baseball. We've seen it in 2022 when they made it to that championship run. So just be sure to stay tuned to anything on baseball throughout the rest of the week. But I think that's all we got for you guys. Is that all you got, Zach?
That's all I got, man. Really exciting. And let's go Rebels, man.
Absolutely. I think that's all we got for you guys. If you can make it out to Swayze this weekend, it's going to be crazy. Even if you can't get in the game, like I said, go out there and tailgate. The Ole Miss fans will let you in their tent if you're wearing Ole Miss gear. Maybe if you're even wearing Georgia Tech or Western Kentucky gear, whatever, they'll probably still let you in their tent because the Ole Miss fans are typically nice about that as long as you're not wearing maybe like Mississippi State stuff or something like that. But they will probably let you tailgate with them and let you have a good time out there with them. It's going to be a good time in Oxford this weekend. Like I said, it's going to feel like a football atmosphere. But it's going to be baseball season. It's going to be hot. Make sure to bring some sunscreen if you're not very tan or anything. Make sure to bring some sunscreen. It's pretty hot out there this weekend. I know it's supposed to rain on Friday, but don't be too worried about that. It's supposed to rain that morning and heat up back later in the nighttime. Ole Miss will have the night game, so you'll get to avoid the sun in that game. But if you're going to be there the whole weekend, it's going to be pretty hot. I think it'll be back up in the 90s on Sunday, so be prepared for that. If you're coming down to Oxford this weekend. I think that's all we got for you guys this week, though. We'll probably hit back with you guys if depending on whatever happens in this regional. We'll talk back with you guys next week. Either Ole Miss season will be over or they will be competing again on to the next round of the NCAA tournament. Make sure to subscribe to the Rebel Walk YouTube channel, like this video, and comment to keep up with the podcast. Follow me and Zach on social media. Follow the Rebel Walk on social media. And with that being said, check out the rebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports.